Hi, Bio. Welcome back. It is Friday, May 1st. Can you believe it is May already? This is crazy. We have been doing this remote teaching thing since I think March 16th, give or take. So just feels like a really long run. But we're going to continue and wrap up this week's remote teaching talking about the next class within phylum Arthropoda, and that is class Arachnida, or the arachnids, aka spiders, which I hate, but here we are. We're going to learn about them anyways. They creep me out, but maybe you like spiders. I don't know. That's weird if you do. I don't think many people do. But before we get going, I just wanted to mention that you will not be required to label a diagram for the spiders, for the arachnids, but we are going to be going over, and you are responsible for the 5 common characteristics that make a particular creature classified as an arachnid. So that's what we're going to go over now. So no labeling, but you do need to know these 5 features. All right, so the first of the 5 common characteristics we see among arachnids is that they have 4 pairs of walking legs for a total of 8. They also have a cephalothorax instead of a separate head and thorax. And so we saw that when we looked at the crayfish. And if you have started or already finished perhaps your crayfish dissection assignment from Wednesday, then you know exactly what we're talking about here when we talk about the cephalothorax. Additionally, they usually have 4 pairs of simple eyes. So arachnids typically have simple eyes, not compound eyes. They have no antennae. And their respiration is done through organs known as book lungs. Right? And so here are 2 spiders, both of which I'd probably pee my pants if they came crawling over to me unexpectedly, but a tarantula and a garden spider from your book. And of course, there are many, 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 many different types of spiders out there. Most are harmless, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. And so arachnids, they are what your book is calling very cunning creatures. They utilize many different means to capture prey. You're probably familiar with the first and biggest one, which is web weaving. You've probably walked through one at some point in time. I hate that feeling more than anything. When you are walking through somewhere and all of a sudden you feel the web on you, oh, gives me the heebie-jeebies. Anyways, there are actually several different types of webs. They are woven out of silk that is produced by the spider, which is very flexible but strong. And so some species of spiders will build what's called a sheet web, which is a single flat sheet of sticky silk to trap their prey. Others will spin what's called a tangle web, and there's really no discernible pattern to this type of spider web. And then commonly what people think of when they think of spider webs, or when you think of Halloween decorations, some species spin what's called the orb webs, which is the concentric circles that stick, that have the silk supported by spokes, if you will, that go through. And the spider will sit at the center of this with its legs on those spokes that go out. And as an insect or prey gets trapped in the web, the spider knows where on the web that prey is based off of vibrations and feelings that it can sense by having its feet on those spokes. And so it'll follow that spoke to capture the prey where it senses that has come in. So it's pretty nifty. Fun fact, one thin strand of silk that is spun by a spider may appear to be weak because it's so fine and thin, and I mean sometimes you can't even see them, you guys know. However, if you were to weave a full rope about the thickness of, say, a garden hose from spider silk, it could support the weight of 2 full Boeing 737 airplanes. So think about your really large commercial airliners that you take to fly. Only the thickness of a garden hose. So I found that to be quite impressive, actually. I had no clue up until I learned that fact, that the silk was that strong. But pretty nifty stuff. All right, so let's just go over a couple major points of spider or arachnid anatomy. For one, spiders sink their fangs into their prey, so they have fangs. They use a poison gland to inject a paralyzing poison, which immobilizes the prey or the creature that it's trying to consume. Spiders secrete digestive enzymes into their prey's body, and the tissues that are digested by the enzymes get sucked into the mouth and into the stomach of the spider. So, pretty gross. But those digestive enzymes aid in the breakdown, basically, of the prey's tissue. Spider poison, though, is rarely harmful to humans. There's a few exceptions, that being the brown recluse, which you can find in many southern states like Tennessee, and the black widow. So those are the in the United States, at least, those are really the two most dangerous spiders. So typically that poison that's secreted from the poison glands is only going to harm the other creatures, not us. Spiders also have, as we mentioned previously, as one of the 5 distinguishing characteristics, they have book lungs. So it does basically the same job as the gills in the crayfish. It extracts oxygen from the air instead of the water in the case of the crayfish. And air enters through a slit known as the spiracle. And it encounters an organ once it goes through the spiracle with several thin layers, so it looks like pages of a book, which is where it gets the name book lungs from. Right? And so, as I said, you are not responsible for labeling this diagram, but just an overview of some of the major features here. Okay, so you can see the poison gland is right here with the fang and the mouth. All right, and so the spider is going to use this area here after it's poisoned its prey to suck and eat the digestive enzymes and tissues of its prey. Here you can see the book lungs. Okay, they've tried to show you here that it looks like pages of a book. But there's also silk glands for producing silk, spinnerets for spinning the different types of webs and weaving the webs that we've talked about. They have an anus, digestive glands. They have a heart, pericardial sinus, intestine, ovary, oviduct, and again, they have typically 4 sets of simple eyes. All right, and so we are going to do a quick fact check for some of the information we covered on spiders. It was just a small amount, so nothing crazy. Number 1 says most spiders have poison glands and produce poison that they inject into their prey. Does that mean that we must fear most spiders because they are poisonous? Well, we already touched on that. No, most just cause a small rash or a bite, if anything at all. The exceptions being the brown recluse and the black widow, both of which I don't want to welcome into my home anytime soon. And the poison is most often not strong enough to endanger humans for most creatures. Number 2 says, looking back at figure 12.7, locate the abdomen and the cephalothorax. So if we actually just go back, we already kind of went over it, but you can see here, this region right here would be considered the cephalothorax. Oops. And this region over here would be considered the abdomen. Okay, so for distinction, the 2 regions of the body. All right, and so we are going to move on to the next class of arthropoda, which is class Chilopoda and Diplopoda, which basically is home to what you would know as the centipedes and the millipedes. Important to note, these are 2 completely different creatures, although often people use them interchangeably or assume that they're the same. That's not the case. So class Chilopoda is for the centipedes, and centipedes typically have flat bodies divided into several segments, each with just 1 pair of legs. So each segment only has 1 pair of legs. It typically has a head which contains antennae for sensory perception. All right, so don't get confused because we've covered arachnids and the centipedes and millipedes in the same video, but while arachnids do not have antennae, the centipedes here and the millipedes as well do. All right. The segment behind the head, so the second segment right behind the head, contains poisonous claws, which help to immobilize insects, and that's how they are involved in capturing their prey. Then if we move to the other class, which is Diplopoda, which is the millipedes, they have more legs than centipedes, if you couldn't tell by their name. Each segment instead contains 2 pairs of legs, so double that of what was in the centipedes. Their bodies, however, are not flat like the centipedes. They are rounded, and they have shorter antennae than the centipedes do, as well as no poisonous claw. All right, right? And so if we look here, here's just an example, nothing too crazy, but we have the centipede, a little bit flatter of a body with just one set or one pair of legs per segment. And here you have the millipede, which you can see it's a little bit more round. All right, and it doesn't have quite as obvious antennae as the centipede does here, and it's curled up so you can't see the legs, but you can clearly tell that there are a lot more legs here than there are on here. So if you ever see one of the two, now hopefully you're able to distinguish between both. All right, and with that, that's the last slide for today's video. I do have 2 short videos. I think they're about 3 minutes or less each. Please watch them. They are important for kind of wrapping up what we've covered here. Even though we didn't go into super heavy detail with the arachnids or the centipedes and millipedes. But with that, I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. Enjoy. Hopefully the weather's going to be good. And I will see you back on Monday as we continue working through Module 12.